Ed Tyler, who was studying his permaculture diploma at the time, was looking for an area to set up a permaculture garden, and he was particularly looking for an area where the local community would really benefit from having the green space.
I first came here in '98, and there was nothing much taller than my knee then.
There's 8,000 new houses all popping up down past the secondary school, which is now behind us. There's about 8,000 houses all being built, which is it's quite interesting. It's really changing the dynamic a little bit of the area, and there's a lot of, like there's old Scottswood and new Scottswood, so we're very much working to bring everyone together and make sure it's still one community.
Ian's idea was to fit in as many different ecosystems as possible into this space. So it's a 2-acre space. So like this is a vegetable garden, and then you've got the orchard, and then you've got the wetland system, and then you've got the meadows and the hedgerows. So it was kind of trying to squeeze like the whole of Northumberland into 2 acres really.
A lot of our volunteers have learning disabilities. We work with people that are long-term unemployed. We work with a lot of people with mental health conditions, and people with other multiple health conditions as well. And it's so our mission as a charity is about inspiring and teaching about the environment and sustainability, and having a positive impact on people's mental health and well-being.
Wow, lots of old, but I'm getting quite emotional.
Oh, all your old friends.
Bits of Ian, well, mostly Ian. He's everywhere in this garden.
Yeah.
I've got a lot of very happy memories of it.
So this sculpture is called the Green Crown Fountain, and it represents a bud, and it is a solar-powered water fountain. We've not got the solar panel in at the moment, but it represents a flower opening out into the garden.
And you can see the basic design that Ed came up with, which is like this radial sort of design with just the heart of the garden and then these paths.
Yeah, it's a mandala, I believe.
And with the kind of wilder, so what you've done here is exactly in keeping with what Ed planned, which is that the more cultivated bits would be near the middle, and then the sort of wilder apple trees in a big circle around the outside. So it's really nice to see it's kind of maintained that feel.
So we call this our accessible garden space. So these beds are specifically designed for people to work at standing height if they need to, people at sitting height. So this space gets used a lot by a lot of people. And then we've got a lovely undercover seating area as well. And then at the back we've got a composting toilet as well.
It's interesting to notice the evolution of permaculture in that when we built this, it was all vegetables, but it was keyhole beds, which was all the thing in permaculture, and nobody ever mentions keyhole beds anymore, nobody does that anymore, and everyone does raised beds now. So this kind of, it's a bit of the historical evolution of permaculture. You've been doing some tree dressing as well, haven't you?
So that's for our forest school sessions. So with that we run 2 different education strands. So we've got the educational visits programme for schools, which is your normal kind of school visits, mini beast hunting, looking at seasonal changes, that sort of thing. But then we also run a forest school programme. So we're a 1 awards accredited training centre. This is where forest schools happens. Like I said, do watch for apples falling from the trees. We work with almost 4,000 people a year we work with through our different programmes. So 2,000 of those are children. I think it was 7 years ago we created this. And we work with one of our youth groups, I think it was the 14 to 18-year-old group. And they did some research on the history of the site, the history of the area. So the site used to be a clay drift mine, which is why there's a mining helmet and a miner's lamp. And then there's some clogs there from the traditional clog dancing that the miners used to do. And then they tried to include some aspects that they felt represented them, hence why there's a laptop on there.
There's a Roman sword as well.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, so we've got a good range.
Yeah, and then the kids' initials are all kind of carved into the metal. We've got a virtual hive that we take into schools.
Yep.
And observation hive as well that we can take into schools, so we do quite a lot of teaching about honeybees and the importance of pollinators. I think. Yeah, it's such a lovely peaceful space, you wouldn't know you were in the middle of the city.
Ian had this idea, which is a fantastic idea, to replicate the entire River Tyne or a river system in this garden. Actually, probably not River Tyne, but a slow flowing river anyway. So kind of from the top of the site, which is kind of where it's supposed to be fast flowing and little miniature waterfalls and all that stuff, and then down to the lake, and then getting slower and more windy as it goes down to the bottom pond in the site. So again, this crazy idea of his of taking the whole of Northumberland and compressing into this site, that we'd have an entire river system with all its ecology from the highlands to almost to the sea represented here. This is the biggest of the ponds, and we go up and you see how we imported loads of sandstone that we got to the upper part to make it feel like a rocky, mountainous sort of landscape. It does kind of follow the natural contour of the site anyway, but obviously hugely exaggerates the difference. But we took a decision, which turned out to be a very bad decision, not to line the ponds, and everybody did tell us at the time. I remember we had a long discussion and debate about it, but for environmental reasons we decided not to line the ponds. Now it's kind of proves, it's an interesting one, because it kind of proves that there are limits to what you can actually replicate as humans from a natural environment. So we lined the pond and the stream beds with clay, with squished clay, and we went and jumped about in the clay and packed it down, and as long as the clay stays wet it forms a waterproof membrane. The problem is that when you get a drought here, which we had, that's what wrecked the system. The clay dries and cracks, and then the water runs through the clay. So this was supposed to be a stream, and when it was built it was a stream. It was full of water, but as I said before, with the clay cracking it doesn't work anymore. So there's a header pond up there, and the water came running through the site to the bottom pond and then was pumped back up to the top of the site, so it was a constant flow around the site. But I mean, it didn't last more than a couple of years really, because as soon as it got very dry this never really worked. I'm a bit shocked really to see how it's turned out as grassland, because it was designed to be like a river running through it, and then banks which should have been full of river flowers and much barer and rockier without all the grass coming in. So
it's fascinating. It'd be really good to learn a bit more from you about the system.
I'm sure you could get that restored and going again. Not that it has great wildlife value as it is, but it's just, it was designed to be a moving water system through the site.
We'd love to get that reinstated. And most of our funding is grant funding from different grant giving trusts. So a lot of our youth work is funded through Children in Need, Lloyds Bank Foundation, the North East LEP. We've had a big grant from the Green Recovery Grant through the government. That's central government funding. Yeah, I mean, it takes a lot of work. We have one member of staff who is dedicated to she works 3 days a week fundraising. And managing the relationships with our funders as well. So that's really important, particularly we've got quite a lot of funders that will repeat funders, but that's because of the relationship we've built up with them. They recognise that we have very good recording systems, we monitor and evaluate all of our programmes, so we can show the benefit to people as well as the environment. So it's a really big job, a really important job. Yeah, because one of the things we really need to do, like a lot of charities, is be less reliant on the grant funding. So we're looking a little bit about how we generate more of our own income. So at the moment we generate, about 60 grand a year we generate ourselves through sticky business, the jam sales, through forest school training that we deliver to teachers. We also do internal quality assurance for other forest school training providers, so we assess their trainers and they pay us to go through our centre, and we do kind of events and things that we hold here that people put events on for people. So the new building is going to allow us to do more events and offer some additional. We want to offer more horticulture training, permaculture training. So the new building is really going to help with that. But if we take on the swimming pool cafe space, we'll be able to deliver kind of cookery training, food hygiene, so lots more employable skills that we'll offer for free to our volunteers, but also things that other organisations might pay for us to run. So yeah, the real aim is to become more financially self-sufficient, so we aren't so reliant on grants.